Welcome back to another episode of Oh My Menses. I am on day 2 of my cycle, which isn't on paper conducive to recording a podcast, but I got the call to do it today. There's been a lot of different ideas for podcast episodes that I've wanted to record, and they keep sort of just like taking turns. The same 3 ideas keep taking turns, like occupying my brain space, and they're all specifically related to menstruation, the menstrual phase. And I figure let's really hone in on that energy and record on day 2, which is not, I would typically prefer to record anytime after day 3 and anytime before day 26 in an average cycle. I would like to talk about rethinking period pain. And by the end of this episode, I'm going to offer you 4, I was going to say practical things, but you might not see them as practical. So let's see how we go. I'm going to offer you 4 pieces of information and the intention is for these pieces of information to help transform your relationship with your period, especially if you experience period pain, which I know so many of us do. The reason I want to speak to this at all is because I have experienced severe period pain at different points in my life. I've been the person who didn't go to school because of period pain, or I guess my parents were pretty strict, so I usually did have to go to school even if I had period pain. But I'd be the girl struggling in class or writing notes to make it look as though my parents had wrote the note for my PE teacher to say that I was menstruating, and that's why I couldn't run the bloody, what do they call it? Cross country. Oh my God. I can't tell you how much I hated that part of high school. And then as I got older, I was the person that would leave work in the middle of a shift in a busy retail store because my menstrual cramps and period pain was just that intense. And I would cry about it because I would cry more about the shame of having my bleed interfere with work and life and my capacity. And that's a whole other topic. My God, menstrual shame on so many different levels, right? But with that history of mine said, in the last, probably at all in the last 5 years, but especially in the last year and a bit, I feel like I've really unlocked a new mode in regards to how I menstruate and my experience of period pain or any sensation that comes with my bleed. And it's been a long journey, and it's been a really unconventional journey. And I want to share more about that in some kind of longer form, more detailed, in-depth way. It's beyond just a podcast episode. But I want to use this episode as an opportunity to just hone in on a couple of the things that really helped shift things for me. And on a practical note, I get sensation when my bleed arrives. I might have a how do I want to call it? Like a small portion of either day 1 or day 2 of my bleed might be with some kind of cramp or intensity, but nothing that is unbearable, nothing that makes me reach for pain medication, not even reaching for natural supplements to help with pain and inflammation. And I'm just thinking, like, even when things started to improve 5 years ago, I was still really relying on my natural toolbox of supplements to take to help prevent and manage period pain, because day 1, day 2, it was likely going to be there and it was likely going to affect my capacity. Now, another note is that capacity is a really interesting topic when it comes to menstruating because we are not physically wired. We have not evolved to be able to hustle like we do in the modern world on all the days of our cycle. We're not wired to be able to exert that same capacity while we're menstruating. And I don't see that as a weakness. I think some people would interpret that as a weakness. I don't think we're meant to work as hard, do the things that we would normally do when we're menstruating. It's just my belief system. That's also played a really big role in my experience of my periods being good, being desirable, but also a conversation for another time, just something that I wanted to put out there. So the first of 4 tidbits that I want to offer you is a reframe of pain. Can you view your pain as a message, as a signal, rather than something that must be stopped or reduced or eliminated? This took a lot of time for me, and this is still a story that I am continually working with. Samantha Zapora calls it restoring pain. Restoring pain. We all have a story about pain, about what pain means, what we make it mean about ourselves, what it means about our abilities, our capabilities, what it means about our health, what it means about our life, what it means about our future, what it means about our age, our vitality. There's lots of stories around pain. And especially over the last year, I had to get really real with myself in terms of practicing what I preach and go, Karinda, pain is a symptom. And you're always telling your clients that symptoms are just messages from your body and they don't happen for no reason. So pain, as uncomfortable as it can we look at that as a message from our body? Can we look at that as your body is trying to communicate something with you? Your body is trying to tell you that something is not optimal. Maybe there's something missing. Maybe there's too much of something. And when I'm saying something, I'm talking about this could be relevant to your diet. This could be relevant to your lifestyle, your relationships, your environment, your routine, your work, your rest. So all of life, pretty much. That pain is telling you that something, somewhere in your life is off. And it can be hard. It can be hard to really lean into that as a message. Half of the people that I work with come to me saying that they've tried everything. And the other half of people that I work with come to me acknowledging the things that could do with some work. And I'll tell you what, it's a really helpful headspace to be in, knowing that there are things that could be changed, things that are maybe off balance in your life that could be contributing to your symptoms, in this case, pain. It's a much better mindset to adopt than believing that nothing is wrong with your life everything's great and that you actually have tried everything. Therefore, this pain must be happening for no reason or some weird unknown reason, and it must be stopped. You can get a sense for like which feels like the more open pathway, right? And that also requires trust. That also requires developing trust with yourself as you relate to yourself, like as you relate to yourself as the thinker, the talker, the observer, the experiencer of life, but also how you relate to your body. Can you trust your body? Can you trust that your body is doing something and it's not for no reason? Can you trust that it is wise enough to be showing you something that is of importance? And this part I'm just coming up with on the spot, but I'm wondering whether the severity of period pain is congruent with how much your body is trying to tell you something is off. Like if you get a little bit of pain, your body's like, okay, look, there's some things that we could address. There's some little things that need a little bit of tweaking. And if there's a lot of pain, your body might be telling you, girl, we need a reset. I don't know if that's the case. That's just an idea to explore. That literally just came to mind, and so I said it, and I'll trust that at least one of you is like, yeah, I'm going to consider that next time I experience period pain. So that's the first tidbit. Starting to view your period pain or your cramps or any pain from your body in general, really, as a message, as a wise signal from your body, rather than something that must be stopped, rather than something that is inherently wrong with you that must be stopped. And that's a really personal journey. Starting to change that language and change that mindset within yourself is a really personal journey, and there's not one way to go about it. All I'm doing is just dropping that in your consciousness, and you get to see where it goes. You get to see where it takes you. Tidbit number 2 relates to the first one. This could be a pathway for you to help solidify that new perspective of seeing pain as a message rather than something to be stopped. Opening a dialogue with your womb. If we're following along with the basis that your body is wise and we're working with menstrual cycles and we're working with feminine mysteries, we're working with the womb. And we must also believe and trust that our womb is very, very wise. And just in terms of the energetics of a uterus, of the womb space, more than just the uterus really, but the womb space, the vulva, the vagina, the cervix, and the uterus, and the ovaries, and the fallopian tubes. This is a really, really potent energetic space. It is a rich, rich landscape to be explored. If you haven't done any kind of energetic journey with your womb, I highly, highly recommend that. Something I did today actually that could be a really good launching point for you is a meditation that's available for free on Spotify by Jane Hardwick Collins. And it's a journey into your womb, and it's a shamanic drumming journey, and it's just about 20 minutes. And she instructs you at the start how you're going to visualize going into yourself and who you're going to meet there. And then you sort of go through that process while there's just rhythmic, consistent drumming in the background. And I really, really love that, especially on the first 3 days of my bleed. That's a practice I really love to engage in. Anyway, that was a little bit of a side quest point to what I actually wanted to say. So yeah, work with the energy of your womb, because there's a lot going on there. But then also physically, we've got a lot going on there. We've got this organ that can expand. I don't know the number. I should know the number because fun facts are fun, and it would be a fun fact. But your womb can expand like crazy amounts. Your vagina can expand crazy amounts. Your cervix opens and closes and lowers and lifts. Like, there's a lot of movement happening. There's a lot of dynamic energy occurring there. And so it's likely going to be a part of your body that you're going to get a lot of messages from. And there's a lot that we can think intellectually up here. We can maybe think that we're dehydrated and we need more water. We can think that we need a heat pack and you know, that's helpful. Our brains are helpful. Our brains are great. But sometimes there are more subtle messages coming from your womb space. And they're subtle, and they're going to be a lot less obvious than a thought that just comes to mind. Well, not necessarily. For some people, this kind of intuitive wisdom can come through in the form of thoughts. I'm going to take that back. But I guess what do I want to say there? It's the difference between a spontaneous, grounded thought or just a hit of like a knowing of like, maybe I should do that. Yeah, I will go do that. Versus like overthinking, versus racking your brain of like all the things that you could possibly do, or all the things that your body could need, or maybe all the things you've done wrong that week that are contributing to the pain, right? That's the difference there. Anyway, let me circle back. Opening a dialogue with your womb. Can you acknowledge that there's a two-way dialogue happening? And that your womb has wise messages to convey to you. And again, this is a very, very personal journey. Everyone is going to have a different connection to their womb. Everyone is going to have a slightly different way of picking up on signals from their womb. The invitation is to just open that dialogue. And depending on where you're at in your journey, this could feel really silly to begin with. If you're not sure where to start, I invite you to start by placing a hand or both your hands over your lower belly. So below your belly button and like above your pubic bone or around your pubic bone. Having your hands placed there and just ask, what do you need me to do? What wise advice do you have for me right now? What is the next best step that I can take? What does my body need right now? What do you, my womb, need right now? Those can be really beautiful questions to just start to open that dialogue. And like I said before, your job isn't to then rack your brain for an answer. Your job isn't then to like go down a mental rabbit hole looking for the answer. These are subtle messages. It's going to come in a way that might surprise you or catch you off guard. You might hear it as a voice. You might get an image pop up in your head. You might get a signal from the external world, potentially. You'll probably get a signal from within. You might hear something within yourself. You might feel a sensation in your body, or you might just feel an urge to move in a certain way. You might want to move lower to the ground. You might want to start rubbing your hands on your belly to get things circulating, to generate heat and warmth. So just opening and trusting that dialogue. And it might feel silly. And like, what have you got to lose? What have you got to lose by feeling a bit silly for a bit? When the payoff could be you start to receive these really, really potent messages from your own body, from your womb. So that's something that I do. And a quick example there that I'll share, you can talk back to your womb. Or maybe you're not hearing anything and that's okay. Just still talk to your womb. Keep the dialogue going. But I started doing this more last year. So obviously, like, I'm a naturopath. I work with clients. I do digital work online. I do this kind of recording stuff. But I also have a physical job part-time. And last year, there was this pattern that there would be this specific location that I would be at, and I would always just be starting my period, or like on day 2 of my period when I was working at this location. And it's physical work, right? Interestingly, the location is a funeral home. And I kind of like what that says about, I don't know, I kind of just like the symbolism of like death and menstruation. I think that's really cool and potent, but I'm a freak, so don't worry about that if that's not your cup of tea. And I was working and I was really starting to feel an ache in my pelvic region. My uterus was cramping. It was a menstrual cramp. And I could feel that I was starting to bleed like heavier and heavier. And I just stopped. I stopped what I was doing and I spoke out loud. I was in an empty chapel, like, again, creepy, but I love the symbolism. And I said out loud to myself, I was like, we're going to be home soon. I looked at the time. I'm like, we've got an hour. I'm going to do the best I can, but we've got an hour. And after that hour, we're going to be at home on the couch. Lots of herbal tea, lots of water. You can cuddle like her. You'll have blankets. You can take all these clothes off. You can free bleed. And you can exhale. And I'm going to try to stay as calm and go as slow as possible for now. But I'm just letting you know that in an hour, we'll have all those boxes ticked. And that was a really potent experience for me because within minutes of saying that out loud, just kind of like whispering that to myself again, and I had a hand on my lower belly as well. Within minutes, the cramps subsided and I didn't take anything. I was drinking more water than I usually would, but I was just like, come on, I know we can do this. Here's the timeline. I think we've got it. And my womb was like, yeah, okay, we've got it. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we needed these things. And I'm like, yeah, I knew. There's just a little bit of a delay. So that was really cool. That's a really nice example of how I use that in my real life. The third tidbit is, the last two tidbits actually are quotes. And this third tidbit, this quote comes from my teenage years, as a lot of my wisdom tends to come from. I love past Karinda. Teen Karinda was a bloody boss. Like, oh, fuck. Yeah, she was good. And this is a quote that I would use when I was a teenager, when I was experiencing really, really severe discomfort. I experienced IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, for a lot of my childhood and most of my teenage years and some of my 20s. Happy to say it's pretty well managed now. Always good to be aware of your gut-brain nervous system connection, as an aside, whether you've been diagnosed with IBS or not. But when I was a teenager, it was particularly bad. And I would be having these really, this might be graphic, but I'd be having these really bad episodes where I essentially felt stuck on a toilet. And I would be in a feverish sweat, cramping, crying, sweating, there's pain. I'm moving my body in all sorts of positions to try and find some relief or to just try and make the process easier. It was a lot. It was a lot. And it must have been a time in my teenage years where Buddhism came onto my radar and I was engaging with the works of the Dalai Lama and some Buddhist principles. And I would be writhing away and something would kick in and I would just tell myself this too shall pass. And it didn't mean that I felt better straight away. All the pain was gone. The episode was over. Oh, great. But just reminding myself that this experience is temporary on some level, at the very least on a psychological level, it was such a relief. It's oh yeah, oh my God, of course, this is temporary. This isn't forever. I'm not going to be stuck like this forever. This too shall pass. I was oh yes. And now that's just a quote. That's just a quote that I use in my life when things feel rough or uncomfortable. And it's certainly a quote that I've used when I've had really bad period pain and I've been in the fetal position on the couch, rocking and again contorting my body just to try and find some ounce of comfort and ease and relief. It's something that I'm grateful is quite embedded in my brain. There's a nice deep groove in my brain for that quote, and I hope that can be of some benefit to you as well. The fourth tidbit is another quote, and this is one that, like, this quote feels like maybe the definition of my late teens to early 20s. Again, we love past Karinda for all the wisdom she stumbled across and for everything she experienced that took her on the path that is the path I find myself on now. And the quote is, "Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional." And there's a little bit to break down with this. If you're a normal person, I shouldn't say that. If you're a human, I hope I have mostly weirdos listening to this. If you're a human, you'll hear that quote and there might be some resistance at first. And you might start to think of all the ways that that can't possibly be true. Suffering is optional. And then you start to think about your personal grievances and everything you've endured in life. And then you start to think about war and famine and disease and injustice. And it's like, suffering isn't fucking optional. Are you kidding me? And I think that mirrors a part of our healing journey where the victim archetype is steering the ship. And I'm saying this from a place of no judgment, because the victim is within all of us. It just has varying degrees of loudness and intensity. And for some of us, it might run deeper. For some of us, it might be more on the surface. For some of us, it might be playing a really big role. For some of us, it may have played a big role in the past, but we've done work on it. You know, the victim, it's just a part. It's just a part of being human. And in our healing journeys, I feel like that inner victim can show up as like, like imagine yourself on the couch with period pain. Why is this happening to me? What is wrong with me? What have I done so wrong in my life that I deserve this pain right now? What is so bad about me? What is so wrong, right? What have I done to deserve this? Says the inner victim. And it's so fair enough. I feel like that is an inevitable part of our journey. Having that voice, having that part of us lead the way. It's so human. If you're resonating with that right now, like, take a moment to like send yourself some compassion. Like, you're not alone in that. And it's very human. So here I am. I feel like I'm suffering. Oh my God, this is so bad. And then I go back to the first part of the quote. Pain is inevitable. And to expand on that, something I've been telling myself for the last year that really seems to help in a lot of situations is, no one guaranteed that life would be a breeze. Like, I wasn't born and then there was this like magical being that was like, hey, you're born now, you're on Earth, just FYI. And there's no pain here. There's no hard times. You are guaranteed a smooth ride. That didn't happen. And there's something about me reminding myself that no one guaranteed me a pain-free existence that just offers me a lot of mental relief. Of like, no one said life would be easy. That doesn't mean it doesn't get to feel easy and easeful. It just means that I have a choice. And actually, I would adapt, speaking of choice, I would adapt this quote, because this quote featured in any social profile I had from when I was like 16, this quote was featured on that social profile. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, and then I would add, you always have a choice. And I love that because it's so empowering. You always have a choice. In facing the most difficult circumstances of your entire life, you get to choose how you navigate it. There may be emotional waves and thoughts and yuckiness that feel totally out of your control, and that's human. But how you show up to meet that challenge, the next step that you decide, how you choose to respond, that is all within your control. And your victim, your inner victim, is going to fucking hate that, because the inner victim part of us wants to externalize the blame. Because if it's someone else's fault, then that's a relief for us. We're not doing anything wrong, and then it's not up to us. We don't have the responsibility to change anything or to have to sort anything out or solve something, right? If the blame is off of us, we don't have the responsibility. And isn't that just like nice and relaxing, and there's no pressure, and like we don't have to do anything? But in the path that I've chosen in my life, I have committed to myself that I will always choose the path of more empowerment. And coming back to the remembering that you always have a choice is empowerment. That is taking your power back. Even though it might feel really gritty and hard and at times. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, you always have a choice. And before I wrap up, to weave a little bit of like practicality into that, I felt like I was choosing suffering when I would have period pain, and I was insisting on living the same way. I was insisting on working as hard. I was insisting on meeting all my existing social commitments. I was refusing to customize my life based on what my body was telling me. I was trying to bypass that, because again, we love the brain, but I guess beyond the brain is the ego. And the ego loves to think that it is more powerful than this physical vessel that you're in, and that it has all the control and that it calls all the shots. So I was letting that run my show, and I was bypassing my body's signals of pain, distress. Hey, we need some attention. Hey, we need some tweaking. We need something different. We don't want to get on a train while we're heavily menstruating, while your uterus is contracting to shed its lining. We don't want to get on a busy train at 7 a.m. We don't want to sit through 6 hours of uni classes. We don't want to do that 5-hour shift until 9 p.m. in the city. We don't want to walk home from the train station afterwards either. And that's just a template of what a day could look like for you. That's not even considering how much water you're drinking or not drinking, or what foods you're putting into your body, or who you're talking to, or if you're using heat packs or manual therapies. My body didn't want that. But I was choosing suffering when I decided to bypass my body and keep doing the things. To be a good girl, and that's another archetype, that's another part of us. I wanted to be a good girl, get the praise, do everything right, do everything that was expected of me, so that the people around me could feel happy and pleased with my performance. But I was coming out last. And what the hell is that communicating to my body? Hey body, can you work well for me? But I'm going to show you that you're not my priority by putting you last when you're bleeding and going through a really specifically energy dense, intense time. That's not it. So yeah, there's pain there, but I was choosing what my day looked like when there was that pain. What I do differently now, if I do have any kind of menstrual pain, any kind of pelvic pain, I stop. I cancel things. I don't leave the house if I don't want to. I might piss some people off. I might be inconvenient. Could you imagine? Oops. But I put my body first, and I go to my bed or I go to my couch and I get myself comfortable. That usually involves a heat pack, maybe a couple, one around my neck, one over my belly, comfortable blankets, making sure Lyca's sorted, making sure I've got some kind of warm water or herbal tea near me. And I close my eyes and I go into my body. And do you know what happens? I get some sick visions. I feel like I have a superpower Because instead of trying to avoid the pain, instead of trying to suppress the pain so I, the ego, can get on with my life and do all my duties and please everyone around me, instead of doing that, I lean in and I feel like I'm rewarded because I usually have this super amazing spiritual experience that benefits me in the long run because it offers me something, it's soul nourishing. It offers me something on a spiritual level. It offers me something on a shamanic level. It offers me something on a psychological level. And I usually have a pretty sick nap. So it's offering me something on a physical level. Oh, my body did just want to slow down and rest. And we're waking up really cool after a delicious nap. So that's how I do that differently, inspired from that quote. I meet the pain. Pain is inevitable. No one guaranteed life would be pain-free. Okay. So I'm meeting pain. How am I going to respond to this pain? Am I going to take the path of it's out of my control? Or how I respond to it is out of my control? Am I going to take the path of, oh, why is this happening to me? Or am I going to take the path of, let's lean in. Okay, here it is. Let's meet it. Let's face it. There might be a really potent message on the other side of facing it. All right. How's that? How's that for a bloody podcast, eh? I am going to go get out of these clothes. I'm going to have a deliciously hot shower. I'm going to wrap myself in blankets. I'm going to slather myself in some kind of oil. I'm going to lie naked in the sun and menstruate. And it's going to feel fucking good. And I wish for you that your next bleed, whenever that may be, has at least an ounce of the same deliciousness that I am going to experience, because I'm choosing how I show up to my bleed. And this is how I'm choosing to show up, with deliciousness and luxury and putting myself first. All right. Lots of love from my womb to yours. Take care. Happy menstruating. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Oh My Menses. If you have a special request of something you'd like to hear me talk about, or you have any questions that you want to ask me, please drop me a line at hello@karindaholistics.com.au. I would like to acknowledge the land and country on which I live, work and create, that of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I honour their connection to land, sea, flora and fauna across this country. I pay my respects to the elders of these communities, past, present and forthcoming.